See how long it takes for the din to settle down. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 48th annual meeting of WPOA. And I'd like to see a show of hands of anybody who was here for the first meeting. Wow. There are a few. Congratulations. Anybody have perfect attendance? No, I'm sorry, that's another question. I'm John Coy, and I have the honor of being president of your WPOA Board of Directors. Mic working? Am I working? First technical glitch. All right, there we go. Let me introduce the rest of the board. Ron Turnbull, stand please. He is our vice president. Ron Duddleston. Oh, hold your applause. It'll take us too long to get through them all. No. Ron Duddleston, who's the treasurer, who you'll hear, vice president treasurer, you'll hear next. Also, Karen Asher. Karen, we lost you from the front seat. There Karen is. John Clayman. John. Larry Lewson. Jim Wright. And from the resort, Hank Teese. Hank, you were here. I know he's in the back of the room. Most people know Hank. And then Mark Fisher, who was unable to be here. So that's our board of directors. The agenda looks a little bit different this year for a couple of reasons. One, we've reordered it a bit just to shake things up. And two, you'll notice that we do not have an election of board members. A number of years ago, we changed the term of board members from 3 years to 4 years, and we simply had to work through that cycle. But I'm pleased to tell you you'll have a selection of up to 3 board members next year, so you can throw some scoundrels out if you like. The other thing that we are doing this year, and it's more of an experiment, we are live streaming this meeting through the WPOA website. Now I tell you that, but I don't want to discourage you from coming to the live meeting. So you can literally sit at Richmond, or if you have the capacity, you could sit in Richmond or Northern Virginia or Raleigh, Durham, or wherever you are, and as long as you have the internet power, you can watch this in the comfort of your home. But please do come. We need your attendance as well. So the first item on the agenda that you'll hear is Ron Duddleston. And Ron will be giving us the treasurer's report. Ron?
Whoop. Good morning. Whoop. Oh, okay, thank you. I'll address this morning our 2016 results to date, our 2017 budget plan, a quick summary. I want to note that the highlights of 2016 and our 2017 budget were mailed to all members and are available on our website if you want more details. 2016 budget, some very positives. We were able to complete 2 culvert replacements within our budgeted reserve funds at a total cost of $135,000. We saw a substantial decrease in gas prices, which has been a plus this year. We completed major relining of both the Chestnut Springs and Rhodes Farm pools at a cost of $30,000 each. We had some negatives. February and March heavy snows exceeded our snow removal plan budget. Our planned valley expenses was $26,000. We actually spent $67,000. Early summer rains moved up and caused quite a bit of overtime in mowing and ditch repairs. As we've all seen in our private life, continued health insurance increases have affected us. Not listed there, but we also had an unplanned culvert replacement at a cost of $65,000. But we're in good shape. We were able to do all of this within our 2016 budget. Where'd our money go? Our police department was at 18%, fire and rescue 21%, road maintenance, which is our single biggest item, was 35%. General administration in our architecture review board, contingency reserve, landscaping, facilities repair, and debt service. Where did it come from? 93% comes from the assessment of our members. We get an amenity fee from the resort. It is 1% of their gross, and our budget includes approximately $250,000 income from that reserve. Little bit from landscaping and other. Yeah. Our 2017 budget, our projected expenses are just short of $6.5 million. All services will be provided, all financial obligations will be met, and all reserve accounts will be fully funded. We expect to, or plan to, put an additional $200,000 into our road resurfacing. This is resurfacing of Wintergreen Drive. Right now, we have $677,000 in it. We'll be adding $200,000. The resurfacing is expected in 2022 at a cost of over $1.5 million. Included in our budget this year, we are giving our employees a 1% salary increase. We are putting 1% into a bonus pool, and we have also increased or adjusted the salary of some of our EMS personnel. It's, as I'm sure Curtis will mention, it's been difficult to stay competitive with the rest of the EMS in the county and in Albemarle. So we've increased that budget. We've also added $81,000 compared to last year to cover insurance expenses. All of this results in an assessment increase of $49 for improved properties and $33 per year for unimproved. So unless we have some unforeseen expenses during December, our 2016 has been a very successful financial year. Our 2017 financial plan is sound. As we did last year, we've been able to limit our increase to 3%, the lowest in 20 years. Our WPOA POA staff is experienced and prepared to accomplish our 2017 plan, and we appreciate your support. Next up is Curtis Sheets, who's give us WPOA.
Thanks, Ron. Before I get started, I want to mention Ron is a lifetime member of the Volunteer Rescue Squad, as are a few of the board members for POA. So I think what you're seeing is certain people in the community that volunteer and give back a lot. You find them volunteering in multiple places, and Ron's a perfect example of that. Good morning, everyone. As usual, we have a full agenda this morning. There isn't much time to cover a wide variety of topics. But most importantly, this year, I think you may have noticed some subtle hints that we're looking for volunteers. Maybe. So at this point, I would like for all of our volunteers, active and inactive, to please stand and be recognized, fire and rescue, if you would. And these are your ambassadors within your community. So if you have questions about the squad, I do hope that you'll track one of them down and ask. These men and women are your neighbors, and they're also providing 50% of our workforce. They're making sure sick people reach the hospital, and they're keeping your WPOA assessments down. So if you've ever had any questions about our operations, please find them and ask. You can sign up today. If you do sign up today, we're offering a special. There'll be an extra zero in your paycheck. So this year I'm going to skip some of my customary call reviews because there are a few things that are kind of extraordinary that I need to get to. But please do know that once again we answered over 1,000 911 calls on property here, and we have a lot of capital equipment that's rolling up for replacement in the coming years. So both agencies need your help, and I know you guys will be there. Actually, I have the clicker. We lost a good friend this year, Dick Gilliland. Many of you knew him. He was an integral part of a trio that pulled the Wintergreen Rescue Squad through some pretty dark times in the mid-'90s. I happen to be rather fond of him because he, among other things, was a big part of the reason why I got hired in '99. Dick completed virtually all the same training as the rest of the staff. He showed up on any type of call, insisted on getting his hands dirty, and then wouldn't leave until everything was cleaned up and put back into service. He was definitely a man's man. He was a gentleman and a scholar, and most important, he led by example every day. I miss him. Our agency misses him, but he did leave a mark on the community, which will forever enhance the quality of life here at Wintergreen. I don't have a photo of the surprise, but sadly, sort of kind of along the same lines, recently the Wintergreen Fire Department received what I believe to be the largest single donation the agency has ever received in its 40-year history. Timothy and Patricia Spry lived in Annapolis, Maryland, where they raised two girls and had a hardwood business that exported fine lumber all over the world. They found Wintergreen, fell in love, selected a lot in the valley where they were going to build their retirement home. And as they would come and go, Mr. Spry noticed our trucks and how clean we kept them. His wife tells me that he was very ambitious and would have become one of our volunteers for sure. He was unfortunately diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and then 15 months later lost that battle. So his wife donated their building lot in his memory to the fire department. And it's certainly a marketable lot, and we will liquidate that and apply it towards our debt service. So I wanted to recognize the Sprys. Our new Chief of Fire Operations is Trey Crawford. He's been with us on and off for about 10 years. His experience has taken him from Wintergreen to Albemarle and to Iraq and back. He's Charles Crawford III, but we call him Trey. He's in the back of the room, and I hope that you'll take a moment to meet him before you leave. Kind of in the category of breaking news, this just in, my staff doesn't even know this yet. The fire departments are evaluated and scored by the Insurance Safety Office, or ISO. ISO determines the overall capabilities of the departments, and then a score is issued for insurance companies to determine your premiums. Trey, as part of his new responsibility, reviewed thoroughly the file from our previous inspection, and he found what he believed to be an oversight. So he filed an appeal with ISO, and as a result, the new score that comes out in April will show Wintergreen as a Class 2 department rather than Class 3. I'll show you what a deal that is. This is the current classifications in Virginia, and you can see that of the over 700 departments, there's only 21 that rank either in Class 2 or Class 1. And the company that we have would be City of Stanton, City of Harrisonburg, departments of that nature. All right. Our stations. As I know, someone pointed out, Station 1 needs a new roof. Yeah, I know that. It's coming next year. I always like to invite everyone to stop by the stations and get to know our team. We offer a lot of value-added services. Mike Riddle, our Chief of EMS Operations, is in the back of the room trying to recruit people for community CPR. That's a big push for us right now. There's all kinds of things that we can do other than answer 911 calls. But when we're on a 911 call, there's no time for small talk, as you can imagine. And so we'll never get to know you if that's the only time we see you. And things just work much better if when we arrive at your home, for whatever reason, we already know who you are. I want to remind everybody for value-added services before I move on, the Wintergreen Property Owners Association has the alert system where you get phone calls, messages, and we've decided we're going to test that biannually. We'll do it when the time changes. So if you go to change your clocks and you think to yourself, you know, I never got any message to remind me to do this, then that's your cue that the information WPOA has on file for you isn't correct. So you would want to contact the WPOA office and get that updated. So twice a year we'll be doing that. All right. My next topic is a little bit complex, so I'm going to use some analogies to help make my point, I hope. And bear with me, this does come together. When I was 8 years old, I asked Santa for a Tonka fire truck, and I was very specific about which one I wanted. It was a snorkel truck, it was made of steel, it could hook up to a garden hose and flow water from the bucket. Okay? Very specific. What I got was a plastic fire truck, which didn't flow water. So I was extremely disappointed, especially since I had been good all year and done my chores on the farm, hadn't gotten into any trouble. So as an 8-year-old, you can appreciate I was devastated. Eventually, what I ended up with is made of steel and aluminum, and it hooks to a hydrant, and for sure it flows water. So I would take this truck over my Tonkas any day and would say that it all worked out eventually. Let's see a show of hands of anybody that's ever broken a bone which required a cast. Wow. Must be skiers. So that's a lot. So I think everyone can appreciate one of the worst parts is everybody asking what happened. So I had a situation, in my case I was run over by a cow and my right hand was crushed. So I wanted to make a t-shirt that said I was run over by a cow, and then on the back I was going to say, and he was yummy. So where am I going with this? There's a little bit of a white elephant, and true to form for me, I want to just get straight to the point and deal with it. For the past 11 years, I've served as Russell's Deputy Executive Director, and as many of you know, I applied for his job when he announced retirement. I was a finalist, and I left it all on the field, gave it 110% through the selection process and the decade which led up to it. By now, you realize I was not selected. Much like the cast scenario that we just talked about, I can't seem to get through a week without at least one or two property owners coming up to me and saying, so I guess you'll be leaving now. And the answer to them and to all of you at once is, no, I don't think so. I lost out to Jay Roberts, and anybody who knows Jay knows that's some pretty stiff competition. Over the past 17 years, Jay and I have been to hell and back together here. We've quite literally dealt with life and death at Wintergreen. We're very close friends, have tremendous respect for one another. Jay's the first person to show up. He's the last person to leave 100% of the time. True story, once he was up against a tight timeline to get the zip line done, Hank was on him. He was really stressing out, and I told him I was going to use a vacation day to come in and just help him for the whole day. And he's, you would think that maybe he would say, that's nice, Curtis, I appreciate that, thank you. But instead what he said was, we start at 7 a.m., don't be late. So by the end of that day, I said, Jay, I could never work for you. But I guess I was wrong. So the truth of the matter is, and I would bet my paycheck on this, there's no WPOA employee who has been more supportive of Jay over the last 20 years than I have. And conversely, there's no one from the resort side that's been more supportive of me or POA. So because of that, I feel the foundation for us to work very well moving forward is strong. So much like the plastic fire truck scenario, when it was announced I didn't get the job, I was disappointed. In fact, it was, I guess, temporarily devastating. But I have faith that soon I'll look back on it and realize it was for the best. So there's some reason why this has happened. And now that Jay and I are on the same team, I very much look forward to seeing what our synergy can produce. And I apologize to anyone who I've stepped on. Sorry to John, Coy, or Jay, or Russell if I've stepped on any of your comments, but there is an advantage to going first. I want to talk briefly about Russell, if I can. Assuming that I work only 2,000 hours a year for the sake of simple math, then I've logged over 33,000 hours working for Russell. And now I stand before you needing to compress all of that into a single minute. So what do I say about my mentor to capture and recognize his work as he heads off into retirement? So I've thought about this a lot, and there are lots of Russell stories, but here's my Russell story to leave you with today. And I left it to the very end in case it chokes me up. There was an employee in my department who worked here for over 30 years and was absolutely beloved by everyone. And sadly, he was diagnosed with an incurable disease that left him unable to do his job. He didn't really want to admit this or embrace it, but he really needed to. And I failed to break through to him, so I went to Russell for help. He told me, bring him to my office. He said he had no idea how to address it, and he dreaded the conversation. So the next day we went to Russell's office, and the employee sat across from him, and I sat at the side. And Russell pulled his desk chair up as tight as he could to the desk, and with one sweep of his arm, he moved all the stacks of paper off to the side to get rid of any distractions. And he looked the employee in the eyes, and he began the conversation with, "You know I love you." I will never forget it. So it was in that moment, and so many others like it, that I learned a lot from Russell. So Russell, you know we all love you. And congratulations, and I sincerely hope that you and Bev get the enjoyment in your retirement that you both very much deserve. So thank you. Next up is Stan Ola, Chief of Wintergreen Police Department.
Good morning. On a much lighter note. Wrong. Okay. I'm not sure how many people in this room recognize the building in this picture, but that is the actual entrance gate to Wintergreen back in 1988. And it was manned by the police department 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even back then. And we appreciate very much what we have now. It was a year ago that I last spoke with all of you, and it seems a lot has changed during that time, but not really. Take me, for example. I'm a year older, but I am certain none of you think that I look like I am. But if you do, after being here almost 34 years, I will beg to differ with you. Today is about the department and some of the events that have occurred over the last 12 months. This is, sorry. You know what's coming. It's one of my favorite subjects. Statistics, numbers and graphs, bright colors and lines and columns. They're all about the history with no chapters to read. They represent events and times past. So to make this presentation short, let us begin. And by the way, if you pick up one of our brochures in the back, there's more stats in there that I'm not going to present today. But this graph represents traffic flows through the gate coming up the mountain over the last 12 months, or our reporting period through September of 2016. A grand total of 301,000 plus vehicles heading up the mountain, averaging about 25,000 a month, which was a little bit less than last year. Graph 2 is a sample of our traffic flow charts that we receive at the gate, showing the daily and weekly volumes of vehicles. And this is for the week of September 26th. It also represents volumes by the hour of the day and shows a reflection of peak times for officers at the gate and on patrol. And bears, what happened? Okay. You just gotta love those bears, I know. This graph shows the number of bear sightings that were reported this summer. They begin in April, they peak in July. You can see we had 77 sightings in 30 days. And by the first week or so of October, they are basically gone. We do try to track the bears based on the reports that you provide us by calling us when you see them or you sight them. And so please keep calling. We really do not want to harvest them nor have them trapped or removed from their own homeland. They are in reality beautiful animals to observe from a distance, so please do not feed the bears. Crimes reported. This is over the last 12 months, a total of only 39 crimes for this year. It is an increase of 16. Most of the reports were related to ski larcenies. Overall, our department was able to clear 25 of those crimes for a clearance rate of approximately 64%, well above the national average of 21.9% for property crimes. Crimes reported over the last 32 years that such records have been maintained. After 4 years of steady decline, you can see we experienced a slight uptick in numbers of crimes reported over last year. Still low, but still too high. This is a new graph. It shows you where investigations have taken us over the years. The officers of this department to within Virginia in our efforts to solve reported crimes that have occurred here at Wintergreen. To work with other departments within the Commonwealth to serve search warrants, conduct interviews, make arrests, and bring suspects back to Nelson County. As you can see, we have covered a lot of territory. This graph is a new one showing you the places other than the Commonwealth where our department has traveled within the United States to solve crimes and bring suspects back to Nelson County. This shows you the extent that we will go to solve any crime reported here within the community of Wintergreen. I will put your mind at ease by letting you know that we have not left the country yet. Okay? 10. That's the number of years that our department has been accredited by the Virginia Professional Standards Commission. We received our third award of accreditation in February of this year, shown here with the executive board, our retiring director, Russell Lotus, Deputy Director Teresa Harris, and Program Manager Derek Mays from the Department of Criminal Justice Services. And yes, the whole department is proud of that fact, and we absolutely appreciate all of your support that we have received over the years to be able to initially receive and maintain our accredited status. And after 10 years, we remain the only private police department in Virginia to have received state accreditation within the Commonwealth. And we are your department. And we are committed to providing excellence in service to you. So in closing, on behalf of everyone in the department, I want to say thank you, and thank you.
I've already been forgotten. 29 years ago, I first addressed this group, and I had not yet joined the employee of WPOA. I had been hired, but that was to be effective in January of that year. I was coming from Nelson County, and I remember observing, as I am this morning, the tremendous turnout of interested property owners. I'm not sure that there weren't perhaps even more at that time. The place was younger and there was perhaps more enthusiasm. But I remember observing that this kind of turnout would never happen at Nelson County for two reasons. Number one, they didn't have a room big enough to do it. And number two, if the crowd was this large, fully half of the crowd would be in the front yard heating up tar and plucking chickens. So by comparison, my 28 years here have been a dream, and I say that with all sincerity. I'll get to more of that in a few moments. I started out last year's presentation with the following quote. I said, the year 2015 has to date been the singularly most interesting of the 27 years I've been here. Well, this year changed all that. This year wins the prize now for a variety of reasons, not the least of which has been the search for my replacement. I had no idea, just how much effort and time would be invested in hiring my replacement. The search committee, the board of directors, and the staff combined for well over 600 person hours of work in this endeavor. And note that I said person hours. I probably wouldn't have done that 29 years ago. This, when added to our routine workload, kept us all unusually busy for the year, and so that the year did pass quickly. Something of a blessing. Wintergreen Resort, as I reported to you last year, was sold by the Justice Organization to EPR in February of 2015 to create the new Wintergreen Pacific LLC. As we approach the end of their second year of operation, I continue to report that the relationship between WPOA and Wintergreen Pacific feels comfortably normal and familiar. With the resort's senior management still in place, cooperation continues to remain strong, and I can't anticipate any changes as Jay changes over from the resort side to the POA side. While the resort is no longer member-owned, it will always be true that what is best for the resort is best for WPOA, particularly in terms of property values and the maintenance of same. Now, usually I have at least one extreme weather event to talk about, and this year's did not disappoint. January 22nd to the 23rd, we were visited by a blizzard with high winds and 18 to 24 inches of snow. Now, the interesting thing about preparing for these remarks is if you got one blizzard picture, you got them all. So I don't know what year this is from, but it certainly makes the point. And on a more serious note, very cold weather first appeared here this past year in December. When I say this year, I'm talking about the year since our annual meeting, in December. And then in February, we had temperatures as low as 0 degrees on the mountain and 9 degrees in Stony Creek. And in between, we had a major ice storm in February. We had enough ice and snow events, in fact, and Ron Duddleston made mention of this, that it depleted our storm budget, our snow removal budget, both mountain and valley. We do have reserve funds for that, which will get tapped for that purpose and for another purpose that I'll get into in just a few minutes. The point being that there was enough cash in reserves and budgeted monies to cover this without any sort of emergency status. Let's see, although we are currently 5.5 inches below our annual average snow or rainfall for the year, it seems that the rainfall that we did get came in spells, and it seemed inevitably to interfere with our mowing schedule. It kept us behind for a good part of the summer. Then we went into a serious drought where all we did was go out and kick up dust, but we are still mowing as of earlier this week. By contrast, in 1989, the roadsides at Wintergreen were mowed twice, once before Memorial Day and once before Labor Day. This year we started as we have for many years, we started in April and continue until the first seriously hard frost, which hopefully will be this weekend. Road maintenance was as busy this year as it can be any year without doing a major resurfacing of Wintergreen Drive and Blue Ridge Drives. In addition to the 5.5 miles of roads with either primer seal or asphalt profiling, Patching was done on our entire road system as needs were identified by our staff and consultants. We try to ensure that there are no breaks in the surface integrity of our roads. It continues to maintain their ability to resist moisture, and moisture is the most serious problem with surface treatments. So we think our roads are in as good a shape as they've ever been, and we say that every year because every year we try to reach this point having them as good as they've ever been. The Board of Directors reallocated 186 from the $186,000 left over from the asphalt repaving 2 years ago. They reallocated $80,000 to our culvert reserve account. We were already anticipating some infrastructure failures in our culverts and felt it would be wise to begin reserving for that. Turned out that wasn't enough. After spending $60,000 on storm damage from mountain and valley rainstorm damage, and paying an additional $103,000 for scheduled culvert upgrades and replacements, we were unpleasantly surprised by a 60-inch culvert failure under Wintergreen Drive that required emergency repair at $65,000 plus. These are pictures of the process they're using to prevent us from having to disrupt traffic flows on our main thoroughfare. This equipment is literally taking these sections of pipe and driving it inside the existing pipe, where they then go inside and weld it together. And the areas between the existing culvert and this steel pipe is then grouted with a special cement mix to create its integrity. It's not only an increase in efficiencies, a decrease in inconvenience, but it's actually a little bit cheaper than actually having to dig up the pavement and start all over. There are several more of these scheduled for the coming years. What we're going to do to pay for that surprise is recommend to the Board of Directors that they transfer some additional funds from our snow removal budget, our snow removal reserve or storm reserve, to cover that, and that over the next couple of years they can begin to replenish that amount. Now, last year we talked about replacing culverts, replacing guardrails. There's no question that a lot of our guardrails are in rough shape. Structurally, they're quite sound, but aesthetically, they're terrible. I indicated last year that a couple of 100 feet a year get replaced by insurance companies who are paying for their clients who take out the most common sections. You can pretty much predict where they're going to be because they're where they need to be. In any event, we did last year replace over 1,000 linear feet of our guardrail system. And this year, we're scheduled between now and the end of the year to replace an additional 2,075 linear feet. When combined with the 1,000 from last year, that represents about 44% of the guardrail we have on the mountain and valley, and so we should be able to completely replace all of it by the year 2018. I keep saying we, and I'm not sure why. The reality is that the new guardrail is galvanized under that baked-on finish, so you won't see you'll never see what you see in the top left picture happen to the stuff on the bottom right. It may get scratched and it may not look as good. It may be duller and less bright, but it will not rust even if the surface of the paint is broken. All right, now it's time for what I've come to think of as our Mutual of Omaha wildlife section. We have those every year too, and they take a significant amount of staff's time. This little guy, and I say little, he actually appears to me, when I've seen him on the ground, smaller than he does in the back of the pickup truck. But he spent the whole summer visiting between the gatehouse and the community office building and the maintenance shop. And here you see him halfway in between at the sewage treatment plant in the back of this truck. Literally, I've seen him personally a half a dozen times in the last 6 weeks probably. And Teresa saw him as recently as late last week, in the parking lot at our building. He hasn't been a problem at all. In fact, he's pretty clever. He travels across roads by going through the culverts, which we're trying to maintain in his behalf. And I've seen him going into and exiting from culverts on a number of occasions. But while he wasn't a problem, we had 6 other bears who were serious problems. We trapped 6 of them, and 4 were unfortunately euthanized. We probably aren't supposed to say, but we're fairly confident that the State Game Commission agreed with our request that the last 2 be released unharmed. Now you have to wonder, Jim Canese has been in charge traditionally for years of our bear management program. This is his house. A bear did that. Okay, and I can't remember whether the bear entered 2 or 3 different times, and there may have, in fact, even been more than 1 bear involved. Anyhow, that bear's no longer with us, and that's really a shame. Jim, of all people, knows to keep his windows shut, and I mean, he probably did everything right. Somehow, in the absence of anyone from the home, one of the bears managed to get a hold of a window, pull it open, and break it, and he visited it on a number of occasions before he was taken care of. Now, we've gotten excellent technical assistance from the Wintergreen Nature Foundation every year since I've been here, or at least since the foundation's been in existence, and this year is no exception. They have provided us with technical assistance in any manner of areas, but as a matter of tradition, every year they conduct a deer management, a deer population study twice a year, and we get very detailed graphics demonstrating to us what our circumstance is. And then again later, they do a gypsy moth population survey. Let me read from their 2016 report, their conclusions on the deer situation. The deer population overall at Wintergreen rose in 2015 and prompted a reinstatement of the deer culling program by Wintergreen Police. This resulted in 34 does and 7 antlerless deer being removed from the population, specifically in Stony Creek. Now, while the Stony Creek population numbers are still too high, it did have a significantly positive effect. The Stony Creek population decreased 24% from the summer of 2015 to the summer of 2016, 15 to 16, to a more manageable 50.9 deer per square mile. I don't know what a 0.9 deer looks like, but the point is the ideal number is 20, and a year ago we were approaching 100 per square mile in Stony Creek. So that program probably will have to be continued this year, and again, emphasis will be on in the Stony Creek area where the populations are significantly higher than what's recommended. The population densities on the mountain are within tolerable ranges. In terms of gypsy moth, you know, we've been really lucky. We haven't had to address this problem in a number of years, but I can assure you when we do, it's a big ticket item. The very first year we addressed a gypsy moth spray issue, we spent $50,000, and that's been almost 20 years ago. So I hate to think what that translates into today's dollars. But along the way, certain environmental changes have occurred that have assisted us. Natural predation or natural mortality has occurred. And this is what the Nature Foundation's conclusions are on gypsy moths for 2016. It says that the gypsy moth population seems to be exhibiting consistent patterns matching the late winter, early spring weather. While April was quite dry, May's wet climate possibly led to the favorable growth conditions of our built-in control mechanism. Entomophaga myga is a fungus that survives nicely, and I'm being laughed at by Mr. Coleman because I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation. Stop, Doug, quit. It's a naturally occurring fungus, or actually probably was an introduced fungus that has thrived in our wet springs and attacks the gypsy moth in its larval cycle. Anyhow, these findings mimic the overall state gypsy moth population. The majority of the state has seen very little defoliation due to gypsy moth, with the exception of western Highland County, where there's over 1,000 acres that's been defoliated. Now keep in mind, for those of you who don't remember the cycles that we've been through before, this defoliation isn't just ugly one year, but if it happens in multiple years, it can result in timber mortality and leave lasting damage. In any event, the plan for the egg mass survey is to begin preliminary work in Chestnut Springs and Laurel Springs or Laurel Ridge subdivisions once the leaves are off the trees, and they'll be looking for these egg masses. Certain egg mass densities will trigger the need for a spray plan. We don't anticipate finding those kinds of numbers this year. With the change in the speaking order this year, you've already heard from Chief Sheets and Chief Ola. And as you've heard, both departments continue to serve at the highest level. I say this every year, I'm going to say it for the last time. When you're at Wintergreen, you're probably as safe as you're going to be anywhere in the United States. Between the police departments and fire and rescue response, this is truly a safe place to be. Now, those of you who checked by the, this is a police picture that went with my last remarks. Those of you who checked by the Wintergreen Sporting Club table over in the corner here had a chance to get a good overall sense of the various activities that they're offering. WPOA has tried to provide assistance in areas where the club is serving our property owners directly. And perhaps our most important collaboration to date has been our 2-year partial sponsorship of a study of the ponds in Stony Creek. The study was conducted by Dr. Tom Shahady, a professor at Lynchburg College, and a number of his graduate students. They were here a year ago summer, and they were here this past summer. The findings in the report that they've provided us have been of great benefit to WPOA as they've provided us with technical guidance in how to manage these ponds for water quality, aesthetics, and overall pond health. The work needs to continue. We have a couple of problematic ponds where vegetation is unsightly and probably not good for the overall health of the pond, but we are working on it. We're able to quantify what those needs are better now. And if this leads to improved fishing as we anticipate, then that's a great side benefit. Here's a picture of one of 3 aerators that were added to one of the ponds down there where we stock trout in the late winter, early spring. To our knowledge, those trout actually survived the summer without the aeration, but the aeration in and of itself will contribute to the pond health. This was a cooperative effort as well with the Virginia Wintergreen Sporting Club, with us sharing the cost basically 50-50. Next, the Friends of Wintergreen will be making a presentation at the community organization meeting immediately following this meeting. And later there's a follow-up meeting at Pryor's Porch, I believe. Is that correct? Pryor's Porch, yes. Where additional information will be shared and questions answered. What I'm going to provide here is a very brief summary of WPOA's efforts to challenge the current route of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline in our area. And essentially, unlike last year where there was a flurry of activity while we were trying to figure everything out, this year came down to the fight on the front lines. And while the yeoman's work was done by Friends of Wintergreen, Friends of Nelson, and other groups, WPOA's participation was significant. Shortly after last year's annual meeting, the WPOA Board of Directors was briefed on the consultant work that had been performed in order to present a strong intervention filing to FERC in October and December of 2015. An additional intervention was filed in May of 2016. And in all 3 instances, WPOA and Wintergreen Resort were listed as formal interveners. In October of this year, WPOA agreed to contribute $6,700 to a currently ongoing soils study that had been contracted for by us, I think initially Friends of Nelson, but ultimately I think Friends of Wintergreen are co-sponsors of that. This $6,700 will be used specifically, more or less specifically, to examine soil structures in the steep slopes of the pipeline route that crossed WPOA property. To date, WPOA has spent approximately $37,000 on consulting and engineering work to support actions to intervene in this matter with FERC. In this next year, FERC will rule on Dominion's application. I've heard a couple of dates, but it's more or less 9 to 12 months from now, I believe, in that time frame. WPOA will need to maintain its place in that process, as well as working to mitigate any changes that may result from the impact of the FERC ruling. Issues such as fair compensation for our property, restoration and reclamation of the property, and other complex issues must, and I am confident, will be addressed. Please join Friends of Wintergreen for their upcoming information sharing events later today following this meeting. Now, as the first to go, I am one of at least 10 employees, senior or key personnel, who will be leaving the employment of WPOA in the next 1 to 5 years. We all came here together. It looks like I'm jumping ship first, but the point is none of us are getting any younger. We've been at work trying to anticipate those changes and to mitigate them as best as possible. I'm sure a more formal succession plan will be worked on during the course of this coming year. The folks that I'm referring to represent departments such as road maintenance, landscaping, police, fire, ARB, accounting, and general administration, or in other words, just about everything we do. Now, it's been a very busy year, and it appears that next year is going to be just as busy, if not more so. Having said that, we all continue to be grateful to the leadership of the Board of Directors and the financial support of all of you. This support allows us to continue a collective effort to improve and maintain Wintergreen as a very special place that we all love. As always, I want to thank you and the board. I do this every year, and thanking you this year is no different except for the fact that it'll be my last opportunity to do so. So I would like to further thank everybody for an amazing career, interesting career, a beautiful place to work, and I'm leaving with the comfort and knowledge that the organization is financially sound, it's well equipped to meet its needs and responsibilities, and long-range planning has been done and continues to be done to handle future needs. Just like our pool linings that we replaced in 2015, the new backhoe and other items were purchased with a cost of approximately $390,000, planned in advance and requiring no special assessment or significant blip in the budget. We replaced just recently a piece of equipment that we bought in 1991 maybe. It was a 1975 model Clark loader. It's in service today if we haven't traded it in this past week. It's been replaced by a brand new piece of equipment that cost a lot of money. But it's a piece that we won't have to lease during snow removal time. And if it lasts as long as the 75, it'll amortize at a pretty low yearly rate. The success of WPOA has in fact always been about preparing for the future. We initiated our last special assessment in 1997. I think it was 2 years ago I was reminded that we'd had a special assessment, but none has been required since as a result of planning. I had the luxury of giving the board of directors over a year's notice of my retirement date. In fact, it was announced that I was retiring last year. They did the responsible thing and planned for a year to initiate a search for my replacement. I think they should be congratulated for their planning and diligence. The candidates they came up with were all well qualified. Perhaps any one of them could have done the job, and their choice became a very difficult one, but by all measures a great one. While he is the choice of the board of directors, he has my complete confidence. So let me have the privilege of introducing your new WPOA Executive Director, Mr. Jay Roberts. Thank you very much.
Good morning. And I haven't done very much yet. It's pretty important to recognize Russell and remind him that they didn't stand up for me. It was all about you. So thank you. I've got a little note here. It says, read from the teleprompter, stay on message, and no tweeting. So I'm feeling reasonably good about this. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be standing in front of you as your new executive director. There are a lot of familiar faces in the crowd, and thank you for your support over the years. Before I begin, I think, of course, it's extremely important that we all recognize Russell and all that he has done for the community over the almost 3 decades that he was here. You guys did a great job of that. Thank you very much, Russell. For those of you who are unaware, my history with this community goes back 30 years. I grew up in Richmond, with Wintergreen serving as a normal spot for our family to vacation and spend time. It was just a regular getaway for us. In the fall of 1985, I began a career here as a ski patroller. That career continued all the way through college. In 1994, after graduating from the University of Georgia, I decided to come home to Virginia, and I came home to Wintergreen in this community. So it's been very special. When I started my employment with WPOA 6 weeks ago, I had just celebrated my 30th anniversary as an employee with the resort. I had the pleasure of working in or directly with every aspect of the resort's business, the community groups, and your HOA. With all of this history, to now be embarking on a new challenge and a new and exciting path while remaining in the community that I care so much about is incredibly special. On behalf of my wife, Tracy, our 2 kids, Jack and Lucy, thank you for your support both now and going forward. As the new guy with a little over a month on the job, I have very little to add to this year's meeting. Next year, I will be firmly in the hot seat. This year, however, I'm not. And I would like to offer up just a few early observations. I'm taking over an operation that is financially sound. It's extremely well funded. It runs smoothly and includes a very dedicated and loyal staff. Because of everyone's hard work and dedication, I'm not coming in to face organizational challenges. I can come into my role with my eyes and my ears wide open, asking lots of questions and receiving lots of feedback. My long-standing relationship with the members of the WPOA team is allowing for a smooth transition and a willingness to share ideas about the future. And I think that's incredibly important. Our first 6 weeks together have been very, very good. As Russell mentioned earlier, his last official day will be December 31st. With over 28 years inside his head, Russell is taking on the role of Master Yoda, and I, his Padawan student. Like the rest of the WPOA team, Russell has fully embraced my constant barrage of questions. We'll sneak off to the conference room, close the door, and you can hear, why did we do X? Why do we do Y? What can you tell me about Z? Lots of back and forth. Knowing, appreciating, and reflecting on the history will play an incredibly important part in planning for our future. Again, thank you very much for your support now and going forward.
Thanks, Jay. Now the fun part, the Q&A. So I'm going to ask Russell and Jay to join me up here, and there are mics placed, and we'd certainly like to ask you to, if you have a question, go to the mic, state your name, and raise your question. Thank you. Bill?
Hi, John. Good morning. First, I think I can speak on behalf of everyone in this room Our fire department, rescue squad, police department are the best, and we're all very proud of you all and all the work that you do, and we very much appreciate it. Matter of fact, I recently, the Silver Oak Club had a training for CPR, so I had a chance to not only learn, but to witness firsthand the value of the rescue squad. They're good. So, okay, thank you guys. John, this may be a question for the treasurer, but if people would pull up their operating budget summary sheet, a couple of key points on here, I think, for the membership. If you go to the total on the income, $6,458,000, and you subtract the $6,270,000 from 216, the proposed, to the current, that's where you come up with that $188,000. But there's two areas on here where most of that goes, 67% of that. And I thought that very interesting. And we'll start with the fire and rescue personnel. Okay, now this is about finance. But if you notice, fire and rescue, out of the 188,000, 108,000, or roughly 9% increase, went to fire and rescue. So I wondered, was that new personnel or salaries, or, because I know the compensation went up 1%. I know healthcare costs, but did we hire more people? Because where was that? That's 57% of that total of 188,000.
That's a good question. It's certainly a reasonable one. We have a combination of things that occurred in fire rescue this year. 5 of our staff were recruited by other municipal departments, so that created turnover. When we hire a new employee, we can't just dump them in a truck. There's at least a 60-hour time that they have to ride as an extra person. That costs money. We have an employee who's been out long-term with a torn Achilles heel. That's lasted about 6 months. And unfortunately, when that happens, we can't just say, oh, well, we're a guy short this week. We have to backfill those positions, which then creates an overtime hit. So there's been that, and we also had some serious health insurance dings that drove up our premiums. Does that answer your question?
I think so, except how many new employees, Curtis?
We had to hire 5 employees this year. We have not increased the size of our staff for fire and rescue since 2010, I want to say, was the last time we increased in number, but we've had churn.
So these were new employees that replaced current employees?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So
We lost 2 employees to the city of Charlottesville. We lost 1 to County of Albemarle. They kind of fish off our pier. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
The other one that stands out, John, out of the 2 for this total of 67% is ARB. And if you look at Architectural Review Board, it's a 12% increase, 81,000 to 90,000. But since 15, it's a 38% increase. Now, I know we haven't had a lot of building going on, and there's 1 paid position, so that sort of stood out.
I'll try that, and Russ will tell me if I'm wrong. The problem we had there is we had a health issue with the person who had been managing the ARB for quite a while. She was gone for employment. We had to backfill her. She came back to work. We still think we need to have a transition person in place because we just don't know what that individual's long-term position is going to be. So it's a transitional cost that we're absorbing right now.
So 2 instead of 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, thanks. And the final comment, and I think most of us have this question. We used to get this nice booklet, and it had a balance sheet included with the operating summary, and that's most valuable, I mean, extremely valuable, so maybe you can send it out again because it tells you a lot of things, but most importantly, what it tells you is if you look at your total assets, this is the last copy we had. It shows we had total assets of $8,359,000 plus, and it shows you we had liabilities, total long-term total liabilities of $3,250,000 plus. And that gives you a fund balance, and this is something that's very important. And the last copy, 214, of $5,109,000. Now, that fund balance has risen 10 to 13% since 2011. And that's good news, of course. That's very good news. Matter of fact, the last year that was published, it rose about 600,000. So one question is, do you really need to increase 3% if you increase your fund balance by 600,000? But that's another question. I guess the thing is, this sheet is very important, and with our infrastructure issues and the pipeline issues, I think we need a balance sheet to see that.
Good.
As an association member.
I agree. Bill, good point. In fact, I asked my wife before she left town where my packet was, and realized I didn't have one. But then I got thinking, well, one of the reasons you get the packet is because we vote. It gives you a proxy statement. It gives you all the profiles of the candidates. And since we had no election, the majority of the information you have in those packets was not needed this year. I do know the balance sheet is on the website, so you can look at it. But Russell, you can handle the whole packet's on the website.
Okay.
So, but Russell, you want to make a comment.
And the only thing I wanted to add to that was the reserve accounts that I referenced several times in my presentation, or what represents that $600,000, for example. We understand and we're very cognizant of the fact that you can look at us and say, well, why can't I hold my money until you need it? And there's some legitimacy to that until we ask for it, and then you go, what, another special assessment? So we're trying to put aside money for known and measurable expenses, and that's why that fund balance shows the way it does.
Where's it held, Russell, and who's monitoring the investment?
We've got a banker that monitors it with Wells Fargo, and the accounts are there. They sold us some really good plans.
I'll bet. I'll bet.
Now, Bill, Bill, the only thing I'd say too, and I'd say this in general, is if you heard Russell's comments earlier, we made no additions to a number of some funds, and if there are some expenses like the culverts, the board is committed to taking dollars out of those funds to do that. So we've got some ability to not move. They're not restricted. But the board has the ability to move dollars around in some of those funds to cover unexpected. But we also are very cognizant that there's a balance. There's a threshold that we just can't keep stuffing money away, obviously.
Yeah, no, I thank you, John, but I think it's important for us to see a balance sheet in writing with a summary. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next question.
My name is Ron Cote, and I've got a question with regard to the property values here at Wintergreen dropping across the board, as we all know. What can the WPOA do to promote a more positive awareness of the Wintergreen community? It seems essential now with that the WPOA get a little bit more involved, especially since the Wintergreen Development and the High Country Associates have virtually stopped any promotional opportunities or activities for the Wintergreen community. It would certainly seem to help all the property owners here a great deal if the WPOA increased the overall interest in the Wintergreen community.
Good question. Taken away a couple of thoughts of my closing comments, but I'll give them to you now. We are committed, while many of you may not be around, we are committed to making sure that when somebody comes up the mountain, they don't see a 48-year-old community, that they see a community that's refreshing itself. Russell talked about the guards on the highway. Many of you may not have seen it. We had hired a person and gave him how many gallons of paint and told him to go paint every post he could possibly find in this resort. And I think he painted some of the resort's posts as well, but we won't hold him liable for that. There's a lot to be done to keep this community looking fresh. We're committed to doing that. We have to do it. That's the one thing we can do. It's a little bit more than just roads and not having potholes in the road. It's what I call street presence. We had a meeting last night with the resort, and we pretty much have laid it with them that this is our goal. Our goal is to straighten up things, to paint things, to get those utility boxes that are laying over on their side. Either we'll do it or we'll get the utility companies to do it or property owners do it. We just got to have people coming up to this mountain interested in property to see that this is a community that cares about itself. And that's the best we can do. We can also, obviously, think about how we promote this community alongside the resort. We can't do a lot of advertising because we don't know that that's our responsibility, but we can work with the resort to make sure not only do we uphold our part of the bargain, but they uphold their part of the bargain, and they're willing to do that.
I understand what you're saying, and it's great when people get here to see a beautiful place, and it certainly is beautiful. I have no issue with that. It's getting people here in the first place to increase the interest in the property value so that property values here will increase. I mean, they've declined, and if we had, I guess, a little bit more promotion with the major markets that draw people here to Wintergreen, it would help all of us in the WPOA as far as property values are concerned. And I don't believe that there's a lot going on by the resort community to do that. The Wintergreen Associates and so forth that have the High Country Associates that had been doing that don't have the money. Right. So I'm just, I guess, asking the question, is there something that WPOA could do to help our property values increase? Because at some point that's going to affect all of us.
Michael?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up on that, but from a different vein. John, and I know we've talked about this, but the impact of the pipeline is probably the most important thing facing our property values. It doesn't just affect the mountain, it affects Stony Creek too, because as the resort flourishes, so do your property values. I'd like to see us go back to our attorneys and find out if there's a way to do a special assessment to fight this and fight it without having to go hand in mouth every month. A $100 hit for a year or two is next to nothing compared to what it does to our property values. And I'd like to see us, I guess paraphrasing George H.W. Bush, read my lips and raise my taxes.
All right. Thank you. Sue?
You and I have talked about this issue, and you've been very helpful, and that relates to the ARB. Mm-hmm. Property was developed next to my home. It's been a couple years now, and they were allowed to clear cut every tree, shrub, and bush off the property, change the elevation of the land, and break about every covenant we have. My concern is not this particular property. What's done is done. My concern is going forward. They still haven't done many things they were supposed to do. But my concern is what has happened to our enforcement of the covenants? Is it just going to be, well, if you want to obey it, that's fine. If you don't want to obey it, there's nothing we can do. So this is my question.
Well, Jay can answer, but I'll tell you we have 2 suits pending at this time for cutting. We have a policy change that the board has approved, and that any cutting will be done with the ARB person on site, with the owner, and with the cutter. And the cutting will be done at the owner's expense. So it won't be, somebody can go off and hire somebody, bring them in here and cut without the ARB person being on site to agree as to what I mean or what cutting can be done. Is that the right?
Yeah, I would argue we're trying to strike a balance. You think about the units at High Ridge Court. When folks purchase those units, they purchase them for the view. The idea of allowing second growth timber, the locusts, the sycamores, to grow up the bank and impede those views, there's something about that just doesn't seem to work. On the other side, allowing folks to clear cut into the open space, trying to come up with a view that the lot had doesn't work either. So we're certainly going after those owners that certainly are aware of the covenants, choose to not follow the rules, choose to not ask for our input. The ones that come forward and say we'd like to do something about a view that we've had for 25 years that's starting to grow in, what effort can we take? We're helping. But the idea of letting view lots become not view lots, like overlooks not become overlooks anymore and grow up, doesn't seem to work. But at the same time, We certainly have owners that will come forward and clear into the open space. We've had owners that have cleared into the Forest Service. I mean, football field of hardwood's gone. And it's shocking to think that it can occur, but it can. To have a policy of no cutting anywhere, it's just not sustainable. So
And
we've
I
got to
certainly
manage it.
understand what you're saying, Jay. These were 100-year-old, at least, hardwoods, and that had no relation to a view. It had relation to building a house that was too big for the lot. At any rate, I just wanted to bring this attention because it's tough for somebody to come to the ARB and say, this is happening, and this is happening, and nothing is done. Well, I'm just giving you a plea. If we want to have our beautiful forested community here, we're going to have to be tough with homeowners. And these people still not, after 2 years, done any water, their water management plan still hasn't been implemented. There's still a burn box sitting there.
We'll get into that again. So,
Yes, thank you. I know you all have. I know you all have tried, but thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Cindy
Hi, Cindy.
Sylvester, Hunters Point. I appreciate the effort the WPOA made with refurbishing the Rhodes Farm clubhouse or pavilion there, but is there any effort underway to refurbish the deck, the pool deck? It hurts like hell on your feet.
Russell?
I haven't heard this complaint in 20 years. Seriously, when we did refurbish that, we put in an exposed aggregate. And we realized after the fact that instead of the polished aggregate, it was cracked aggregate. And yes, there were sharp points. And all I can tell you is that this is running.
But there's no kids down there.
But to my knowledge, there are no immediate plans to deal with that, but we do recognize that the wrong material was probably used. And unless we can pour some sort of acrylic on it and seal the top of that, I don't know what else could be done. I will suggest to Jay that he look into that.
All right. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Larry D'Angelo, live on Shamokin Springs Trail. One question here is just curious. What percentage of the people that have houses here and that do not pay their annual dues, and how is that handled? That would be my first question. I have another one.
Just answer it from the floor if you want. You don't have to climb up.
I don't like to say.
Okay.
Right now, our delinquency rate is running less than half of 1%. We probably have the best collection rate of anybody in the state, if not the East Coast. We are very diligent. We have a set program where on certain dates we take this action. The next date, when non-payment has still not occurred or is still happening, we take another action. And that goes all the way to, in a couple of occasions, foreclosure on property. So the issue of deadbeats out there in our organization is almost non-existent. Teresa,
What does half of 1% relate to in numbers?
that's what I was going to ask. What's that number?
25 people that probably are in collections right now.
We're talking about 25 people in collections. That represents $35,000 perhaps
Okay,
out of a
thank
$6
you.
million budget.
Okay, next question is, it always kind of bothers me that we have Roseland as our mailing address. Why can't we have Nelliesford? They have a post office there. You tell somebody from long ways away that, hey, our address is Roseland, and they look it up on the map, and that's not even close to here. So why can't we get it changed to Nelliesford, which is the closest post office?
Because they don't want to. We've been fighting this battle also as long as I've been here. And a lot of people just go ahead and get a box in Nelliesford, but of course you've got the inconvenience then of traveling to and from there. The best we've ever been able to get them to do was about 12 or 15 years ago. We got the post office to agree to recognize a wintergreen resort as long as the Roseland zip code was on there. But, I mean, I can't begin to explain the post office. They have, I mean, and I'm not being facetious there, they have service areas throughout the country, and it just happens that the folks coming up 664 get their mail from Roseland, and so do we.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Okay, any other questions? Wonderful. My last task, I think I would be remiss if I didn't do this before we adjourn. We've recognized Russell. I'd like to turn that into a formal motion before this group. And I'd like to make that motion to basically express our appreciation from all of us to Russell for his unfaltering commitment to this community and dedication to this community for over 28 years. And to extend to him his wife, Beverly, and their family, best wishes for good health and lots of enjoyment in the years ahead. I'd like to put that motion to the floor. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much. With that, as you'll see on the agenda, we have about a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and we ask you to come back and listen to 4 organizations that provide a lot of important activities and enhance the quality of life of this community. So I'd ask you all to come back and sit and listen to what these organizations have to say. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Wonder if you could take your seats so we can get started. Those of you in the aisle in the back, would you please take your seats so you can get started? I want to welcome you to the second half of our annual meeting, the Community Organizations section. My name is Ron Turnbull, and I have the pleasure of emceeing this. I'm not going to say much of anything. My job is really twofold. One is to keep the speakers on a timeline that we've suggested to them. And we've suggested that each speaker limit his presentation, his or her presentation, to 10 to 15 minutes max. We will also have a very short period after each presentation for questions and answers. One of the things that happened to us last year was that certain segments engendered so many questions that we just ended up with this session being like an hour and a half, and as we got toward the end of the session, people were leaving because they just had problems sitting in a chair for 3 hours. So that's why we're going to do this. John Ansel was speaking about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and what the Friends of Wintergreen have done, and that always engenders a lot of questions. We're going to cut those questions short, but John has agreed that after this session, if you have further questions, he will stick around over there on the other side and answer questions that you may have. So we're going to try to answer as many questions as you can. And John, there's also the session after this session in the Prior's Porch. So we have an opportunity to do that. I would encourage you to stay to the very end because we have some, it's important that we hear from all of the people that have volunteered to come in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And the first speaker we have today is John Ansel. John, as you know, has led the charge for Friends of Wintergreen in trying to deal with the Minion and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And John will bring us up to date all the things that they've done since he last spoke to us probably a year ago, and it's been a very active year, I know that. So please welcome John Ansel.
Good morning, everyone. All right, I've got 15 minutes, and I'm going to try to go through things pretty quickly again, and I find that, you know, I think the last time we gave this talk was maybe 5 months ago, but people like to sort of get up refreshed again in terms of exactly what are we talking about here, how does it affect Wintergreen, and so I want to cover the following topics. Just a little bit on the pipeline and how it impacts Wintergreen, and we have a little more data on that. I know some people here were talking about property values, so we've got some information to share with you on that. And then sort of what's next, because we've now entered the sort of formal phase of the pipeline review from FERC, and then need to ask your help again. So without further ado, first of all, this is our group, the Board of Directors of Friends of Wintergreen. Could I ask our colleagues to just stand up? Working over there, Dave Suiso, Bob Kemp, John Clayman, Marty Caesar, I think, is away. So this is a full-time job for these folks, and they're not overpaid. I can tell you that. We also have an advisory committee, and as you can see, our mission is to protect and enhance the value, which includes property values, beauty, and sustainability of Wintergreen. So what's new here? So point number one, the pipeline has not been approved by FERC yet. They've just started going through the formal evaluation process. But what has happened, it's been delayed for at least a year, so it won't go into service or construction won't begin until late 2017 or 2018 if it gets approved. Unfortunately, Dominion is still targeting the Wintergreen area. That's still part of their plan, if you will. And we've come to the conclusion they're not going to change unless we can get FERC to change. So in the last 6 months, we've had a very big push with FERC to get this pipeline moved. Here's the new timeline. By the end of this year, we expect FERC will publish a draft environmental impact statement. Oops. By the middle of next year, probably July, August-ish, there would be an environmental impact statement, and there's an opportunity to comment after this, an opportunity to intervene after this. If it does get approved, construction would begin in the latter part of next year, and it would be operational at the end of 2019, which is at least a year delay from what it was when I last spoke with you maybe 3 months ago. As far as Wintergreen is concerned, this is the Wintergreen Mountain entrance. I'm just going to go through some maps to show you where we are here. This is the Wintergreen Mountain community. This is our entrance here. This is Spruce Creek down here, and Bold Rock Winery here. This is the route, and they're focused on cutting through the Appalachian Trail, or going under the Appalachian Trail right here. It's a needle. From looking from Devil's Knob, the Blue Ridge Overlook, looking southeast, you can see Bold Rock side over here. This brown line is the pipeline. It will enter Wintergreen lands up here at the top of Piney Ridge Mountain, and it will go down on Wintergreen land to the gatehouse, and then across the street. To give another view of this, this again is Wintergreen Mountain. Here's the entrance. This yellow is the pipeline itself. This little red area here, which is right outside the Wintergreen entrance, will be the site for a tunnel digging operation, a 4,000 plus foot tunnel, 52 inches in diameter, that will tunnel underneath the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Appalachian Trail to the other side of the mountain in county. And I'll show you a little bit more about the construction that will be happening in our area, again, if this gets approved, and we're hoping it will not. And then lastly, just to show you, this is a drawing that Dominion did as recently as last May, is the view from Devil's Knob Overlook. You can see that little yellow line there, but it will clearly be visible from our community and some of our overlooks. So that hopefully gets you oriented in terms of what we're talking about here. There are 4 impacts to our community, not only the Wintergreen community, but the community at large. So one is an economic and financial one. So there are 2 projects. You've heard me talk about this before. This is still, unfortunately, the case. 2 projects will not happen or will be substantially delayed. One is the the planned Wintergreen Hotel. I think Hank may say a few words about that. That would be a substantial investment in this community, and that's one of the kinds of investments our community needs for property values to grow. So that, I'll let Hank sort of speak to that, if you will. The second is another resort development in the Nellies Ford area across from Bold Rock, which would be also a substantial investment. Both of these projects together collectively would bring 250 new tourism jobs to the community. Let me put that in contrast to 39 permanent jobs the Atlantic Coast Pipeline will bring to all Virginia, and none of those are in Nelson County. So this is clearly a problem. What's new is in red. We've gotten a sort of a better sense now as to what the economic impact will be, and some estimates are a 20% downturn in business during construction. And when I show you some of the construction implications and locations, I think you'll get a sense of that. And then we've always heard, Dominion has always said there'll be no impact on property values. We've never really believed it, particularly for our kind of community, this vacation type community. So we wanted to do a study on that. I would point out that as goes Wintergreen, so goes Nelson County. So virtually half of all of the taxable tax income in Nelson County comes from Wintergreen. And Nelson County is a community where nearly 60% of the kids are subsidized meals. So this has got ripple effects, not just locally here, but further down. we did a study on property values, sort of before and after the pipeline was announced. And these are the numbers, thanks to our realtor friends. It's always hard to make a comparison here. But we see that wintergreen is down 10%, in some cases land 16%. And note also Stony Creek is down as well. So everything is down here. Compare this, if you will, to other Virginia communities, even Stanton, or maybe I shouldn't say even Stanton. Everything's up. So this is clearly an absolute change and also a larger relative change in the order of 15% today. And again, of course, the pipeline hasn't been approved or built, but these are the current numbers. So number one is economic. Number two is safety. I think, as you all know by now, that the pipeline is coming right to the front of the Wintergreen Mountain entrance. But I think what's not really so well known is that it's also going by Stony Creek as well. In fact, Stony Creek is in part of the evacuation zone, should there be some kind of incident. So this is all of our communities. And I'm not going to go through this anymore. You've seen this before. This is still a very important issue. We've been communicating to everyone. It hasn't changed. This is Appomattox, which was a 20-inch pipeline, and this is the size of the 42-inch pipeline. The third area is construction. So construction will go on for well over a year. And 2 points I'd like to make about that. One is a lot of significant construction is going to happen right, let me orient you now. This is Wintergreen Drive. This is the gatehouse. This is Breach Grove Road. And this area here is part of this construction area and where there will be this drilling operation. And John tells me that this is the size of 2 football fields right at the front of our entrance. Is the pipeline coming from down Wintergreen property, and then this is a tunnel that would begin going under the mountain. That's number one. Number two, Dominion announced that it will be using Wintergreen roads, or would like to use Wintergreen roads for construction access, and this is their map. So this is the Wintergreen entrance. This is again where that tunnel location is. This orange line is the construction road access they would like to use, which includes Wintergreen Drive, our main drive-in, Fortunes Run Drive up to Fortunes Point, and then lastly, you can see these little green areas here are temporary work areas where that construction will take place. So construction is the third, and then the fourth is environmental. And you know, this is I've learned a little bit about this business. You know, our federal agencies have a lot more clout with Dominion or any pipeline company than regular people. So the U.S. Forest Service is one of those important agencies, and they just 2 weeks ago came out with what you see here, basically. And if you read it, they have sort of gone to FERC and to Dominion and said, hey guys, the route for the AC that would cross our land, that is the U.S. Forest Service land, would has some challenging terrain, steep slopes, headwater streams, and you can read it, highly erodible soils, high value natural resources, further exacerbated by the high annual rates of precipitation. So when you read this, you say, well, why does this not apply to us? Well, it absolutely does apply to us, and in some cases more so, because Camille happened on this side of the Blue Ridge Mountains, not the Augusta side. They further went on to say that similar hazards on other smaller pipeline projects in the Central Appalachians, like this one here, this is a 20-inch pipeline, have led to slope failures, erosion, and sedimentation incidents and damage to aquatic resources. And here's an example. This is a 20-inch pipe in West Virginia that's where the owner of this pipeline was cited for 18 violations and fined in an area, in a sloped area that's not nearly as steeply sloped as what we're talking about. The owner of this pipeline uses techniques that are called best in class, and the owner of this pipeline route is Dominion. So this is an example of the kinds of things that can happen in these areas. So clearly we're concerned about the same thing, and we've commissioned a soil study, among other things, to go to FERC to show that we have the same, if not worse, conditions here. So we've done a lot. We've been all over the state. We've spoken with everyone many times. Our issues are well known to our state politicians. Pipelines are a hot potato for these folks because but they have to be pushed hard to do something. We met as recently as 2 weeks ago with the staff from the governor's office and our 2 senators to essentially ask them to do 2 things. One, again, to sort of know the new alternate routes we've come up with, to demand that FERC respond to alternate routes, which we think are better than what Dominion has planned. And then secondly, to try to push politically where they can to get this changed. We've also met with FERC over time and with the National Park Service. So they know about us, but I think we do more. We need to push harder. In fact, the advice we're getting from all the politicians is keep pushing. And they're speaking about themselves. So what's next? Several things. I'm not going to go through all the different things we've done. We've done a lot of work and a lot of filings over the last 6 months, some of which in conjunction with WPOA, but we're expecting a response from FERC on their response to our alternate routes. We've asked for an engineers meeting with our engineers and theirs, and responses to all the objections that we put forward with them. So we expect to hear back on that. And we are looking for a response from our public officials to ensure that FERC is compliant, that they're following the rules, they're treating us fairly, that FERC responds to what we're doing, and that we would like to have a meeting with Dominion and with our engineers in Dominion and FERC to review the routes that we came up with. It's as I said before, it's got to be a chaperone meeting. We're not interested in a one-on-one meeting, but to sort of get our technical routes done. In terms of new actions, we are co-sponsoring a soil study with Friends of Nelson and WPOA. Our next steps are responding to the environmental impact statement coming out. We expect that response in the first quarter, to the environmental impact in the second quarter. And I want to spend just a couple of seconds on potential legal actions we're examining as well. So one is we are really trying to hold the regulators' feet to the fire here, that they're following the regulations properly and they're complying with NEPA. And we've got a legal team on that. Let me go to the third, Federal Trade Commission. There's a potential here for an antitrust complaint. Is Mike Carroll here somewhere? Yeah. Mike has done some really fabulous work on filing a complaint. On filing complaints with the FTC and now with FERC, discussing antitrust related issues, because all of Dominion's customers are themselves. So they're doing it for themselves. So we'll see where that goes. But please, a big hand for Mike for doing some. And on the political side, Michael Cook, is he here? Michael Cook as well for helping us on the political side. Mike, stand up. And then lastly, you remember that slide where I showed you the property values going down 10%? You know how much that's worth? That's about $100 million. So when you add all the properties up here and look at 10%, just think of your house and take away 10%. That is the financial impact. Now, in the eminent domain, there are rules for compensation and what they call just compensation. I think just is in the eyes of the beholder, but we are looking and speaking with experts now to see that in the worst case, if we have to move to Plan B, how do we make sure that the least amount of damage is created, and when there is damage, we're getting the most for it. So that's what that means. So can we win? I would say yes and no, and let me answer it this way. FERC rarely disapproves pipeline projects. They have here in Oregon. They actually flatly did no, but when you look at the numbers, it doesn't, just an outright ban on a pipeline project doesn't happen a lot. But there's one exception to that now, and you can also see the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is beginning to get the notoriety of the Dakota Access Pipeline, if you've heard about that, the one going on as well. So I would never say never, though, because as you probably know, if you do know, we have a new president. His energy policy is all of the above. Who knows? Maybe coal's coming back into fashion nowadays, so you just never know what this means. But moving pipelines, moving them from one location to another happens all the time, and that's what we're looking to accomplish here. So, with the following, the advice we've been given by everyone from our most senior government officials is keep pushing. And here's what I'd like to request of you, all of you if you can. If you know the governor, if you know members of the governor's team, the senator, any of our lieutenant governor who's a 2017 candidate, our local officials, you know officials at Dominion or at FERC, please get on the phone, call them. If you're going to fundraising meetings, raise the question about this. They will listen. They need to hear this. They've heard it from us. They know the facts. But we need to really make some noise here. And this is a really, really good time to do it. So can I ask for your help on that? Don't be shy. Please don't be shy. If you can just call your local government official and let them know how upset you are with the location of the pipeline. This will go a long way. And then secondly, we are continuing our efforts now. Our 2017 budget looks like this, so whatever continuing help you can provide, and I'm so grateful for all the help people have provided. We thank you again for that. So with that, I think I spent my 10, 15 minutes.
I'm going to incur the wrath of everyone sitting in this room and say we don't have time for questions because we have 3 other speakers, but John has agreed that he will stay around after we're finished to answer any and all questions that you have, and that will give him a lot more time to answer those questions. But we could spend the next 20 minutes on questions and not get to the next speaker. So, John, we're going to move on. Thank you very much. Okay. As usual, that was a very good presentation. I'm sure there will be some follow-up. We always look forward to the next speaker. To bring us up to date with what's going on with the resort, to quell rumors that have been going on since we met with him a year ago last year. So it's my pleasure to invite to the podium Hank Thies, the general manager of the resort.
I'd like to begin my presentation with a review of, I'm assuming I'm moving the slide. There we go, except it moved twice. I'd like to begin my presentation with a review of a property and member survey that we conducted in March of 2015. This survey was sent to all property owners electronically, and we got a really nice participation. We had about 1,800 surveys returned. Of those 1,800, about 60% were from members. So, and if we, and I'm going to figure that out before the day's done here, I'm sorry. As you look at the profile of those surveys that returned, if you take the top 2 categories in terms of property owned, you can see that we're about 67% of those people returned to have been property owners for 7 or 8 years. And then in coming to Wintergreen, they've been coming to 85% of those people that returned those surveys have been coming to Wintergreen for 7 or more years. So, we've got a good sample size and people that are quite experienced with the resort and the properties in general. One of the questions that we inquired of, we asked people, how do you rank what we offer here? What do you participate in? And the overarching thing that was really a write-in element is the beauty of Wintergreen. It's just so drop-dead beautiful and what it does to them, how relaxing and enjoyable it is for them to spend time here. But as you go down through the ranking, you can see that it's restaurants and skiing and fitness center and golf and snowboarding, or excuse me, spa, tennis, and so on. So if we were to summarize that, it kind of looks like this. You know, this is in, you know, the participation in the restaurants is very high. Ski, and many people probably purchase their property here with skiing in mind. Aquatics and fitness, golf, both on the mountain and in the valley, spa, tennis, and Discovery Ridge. So we also asked our members to rank their priorities, and this again was really pretty intuitive. The membership told us that the member value is very important to them. They told us that the exclusive facilities are important, as well as the condition and appearance of the resort, and those things are not lost on us. And lastly, and a bit more of a sort of a write-in element to us, we've been getting particularly favorable comments about the member events. With the survey in mind and giving consideration to the things that were brought forward with that, as well as filtering it with our business model, we've got some new initiatives that we're excited about sharing with you. So the one thing that, and I'll give you some more details on this in just another moment, but we are going to go ahead and expand the Winter Garden Fitness Center. That work will begin as soon as the weather provides the opportunity. So that's, you know, somewhere in March or early April, with the goal of completing it prior to the mid-June period. And we don't believe the center will have to be out of order or out of availability for all of that time, because some of the work can be done outside without breaking into the existing center. In midwinter, we intend to go into the Stony Creek building and upgrade the locker rooms, the men and women's locker rooms, as well as the fitness center. And again, that would be work that's sort of like a February initiative and finish in, by mid-March or so. So we're not inconveniencing people. And that fitness center, again, won't be out of order or out of availability for that time completely. So details on the Mountain Fitness Center, we're going to have the newest and latest equipment will be in there. We believe provide the opportunity for innovative workouts and things that maybe you've seen or heard about. The actual size of the classroom will be expanded, and that'll give us the opportunity to offer more and different classes for the people that are interested in that. And then in terms of the resort side of the business, hospitality service surveys tell us that at least 30% of the people, when they book a social or group lodging event, they consider what the fitness facilities are like, or what sort of availability they have. So we think that that'll help us there. What you see here is a schematic of the expansion. The rectangle is the existing facility, and this represents an expanded exercise room. That the current room ends at this post, so it's going to move out a little bit. So this space here is just short of 2,100 square feet. The addition is 1,800 square feet. Please don't hold me to the layout or the types of equipment are there, but we just did this with Life Fitness in an idea to say, well, what would this look like and how might we configure this room? Obviously, we're going to refine this as we go forward, but we're very excited about this. This will give us the opportunity to provide a quality workout experience for our members and guest of members and resort guests in spite of the time of day, because in transparency, we know that there's times of the day, days of the week, or periods of the year that individuals go up there for a workout and it's just, maybe there's available equipment, but it's just a little too full. And say, well, I'll come back another time. So again, we start that, let's say, late March and complete by mid-June. Another initiative that we're equally excited about and working, this is where being part of Pacific Group Resorts is such an advantage to us, because they've been able to go out and negotiate an arrangement with Rossignol Ski and Snowboard Company, who is, they're really the leaders in innovative technology and providing quality rental experiences for people. So we're going to go in and offer this, and we open here December 10th, I hope. December 10th, we'll be offering performance ski and snowboards. This will be an upgrade in performance. And you know, if you haven't tried the latest technology, you really need to try it, whether it's ski or snowboard. But it is just flat out. It is, you know, I am convinced that if this equipment had come along, you know, I have to be careful what audience I say this to, but if this equipment had come along 20 years ago, there wouldn't be snowboarding because the skis are just that much fun and can do that much more. But we have snowboarding. It's in our intention to transition to a full inventory of Rossignol equipment within the next 3 years, excuse me. And one of the things you'll see this year, if you're familiar with the rental shop, is we have redesigned the flow and the pattern through the shop to where we believe we will improve the flow through by about 20%. And one of the other advantages with Rossignol, I think you'll see some branding and some signage that is new and brings a fresh look to the rental shop. And it's, you know, it's kind of hard to believe that by December 10th will be full-blown rental. And then again by, you know, April 1st or so, it'll be back to this sort of function space. An initiative in the golf area that this has come forward from Fred Biggers, our director at Golf Maintenance. What we're referring to is we're going to take the Monacan 9, and this is in response to this year, which was a particularly warm summer, where the fescue and the bluegrass that surround in the green surround areas, it just withered under the heat, and we struggled to have that as a very, you know, sort of an acceptable playing surface. We're going to sprig the green surround in a couple holes at a time, which we won't have to take Monacan completely out of play, although we'll generally rely on the Tuckahoe and Shamokin rotation. But we'll be able to transition to a Bermuda green surround on those 9 holes, and the difference there will be, one, when the heat comes on, instead of that grass withering, I don't know how familiar you are with Bermuda, but Bermuda grass loves the heat. You know, it's bring it on. Just give them a little bit of water and the grass grows like crazy. The other thing is it's a bit of a self-consideration. The Bermuda will allow us to cut the green surrounds lower. And it's not that I don't ever get on the green, but I seem to spend more time in the green surround than I do on the green. So we think the playability of the golf course will be improved. So, and that's a project that will begin, we have to get the grass growing to do it. So that won't begin until about mid-June or so. Now, on the mountain, we're finalizing an order for new golf carts for Devil's Knob. And Fred has also come up with several initiatives on the maintenance of Devil's Knob. We know that we have drainage issues. Now, we had an extraordinary amount of rain in May and June that affected the wetness of the course. But we still think we have opportunities to improve the drainage in the fairways of 7 and 10. And then if you're familiar with 11, we have this mysterious sort of underground that surfaces and goes away and comes back and goes away. We're going to really work to get to the bottom of that. In the restaurant world, we have a new chef at Devil's Grill. If you haven't dined there, Travis Terry, he has his initiative in that restaurant that he's really passionate about, and it's getting great reviews for us, is the showcasing of local farm products. Kirsty, the manager at the restaurant, has an initiative that she's beginning November 20th, running through the month of January to sort of matches up with some sporting events that happen to be on TV. So it's members happy hour from 1 to 5:30, and that would be available to members, their guests, and resort guests, and that'll have weekly appetizers and drink specials. At the copper mine, you may remember Robert Cole left us after 32 years, I think. You know, a long time of just terrific service, and you know, many fond memories of Robert. But we have a new manager, Dan Gerthead. Thank you. And Dan comes with a lot of hospitality experience. Most recently, he had been working as a supervisor in the Edge, but prior to that, he worked in the Doubletree organization, so he's got experience with large restaurants and fine dining, and he's well suited for that. In the Edge, we have a new chef, Peter Sullivan, much easier last name to say. And Peter is working on a new menu in the Edge that he'll be launching in early December. It's Stony Creek. Chris is down there, and he has a new seasonal fall dinner menu. He's also has a new Sunday brunch menu. And the Sunday brunch is going to be a little bit unique in that we'll also provide a la carte offerings on the Sunday brunch. So those are the new initiatives as we go forward. Now, I often get this question of, how's it been? Well, you know, I don't know if you remember New Year's Eve when we did the fireworks, and we had a unique thing with winter fireworks in that we had a risk of fire. We had no ground whatsoever, and you know, it wasn't unique to Wintergreen. All up and down the East Coast, it was the worst start to ski season that anyone had ever imagined. It was the worst ski season at Wintergreen that we've ever had. And it's really because we just lost that Christmas period in early January. And, you know, in spite of how good it can be in March, you can never, you know, early March never replaces Christmas. There's just no replacement of that. So it was 15 degrees above normal for the month of December. Tough way. But, you know, once we got the temperatures, once the weather came back, our snowmaking system that we refer to as snow power just rocked. 8,000 gallons a minute, notionally 37 feet of snow on the equivalent of a football field every 24 hours. We can make snow like nobody else. And I think that Zach Marlowe might be in the back of the room. Yeah, he's standing back there. He's got a matching shirt on with Dan, so use him with Dan. But Zach is taking over some of Jay's responsibilities, and Todd Clark is taking over the other portion of Jay. We sort of divided Jay in half. But Zach comes to us from Liberty. He's got it down. He is a snowmaker. And to top it off, we have this effect that we have employees that leave us, sometimes very valuable employees, and after a year or so they come back. Which we like. And Buster Sanders, who is, you know, Zach's #1 go-to guy on snowmaking, came back. He left and worked for a national or international snowmaking company and has returned. So we're really in good shape going into the winter season, and we're excited about that. In regard to the last, that's 7, 8 months with the spring, summer, fall business, how many of you get our emails? Oh, give me some love here, guys. Please sign up for them. I mean, we send out 4 million emails a year. Now, not all to you personally, Larry, although it might seem like it. But we different lists and different mixes, and you know, we're sensitive to fatiguing emails or things like that. But you know, we're making videos. We send out these video of the week, and we've got some pretty clever things. A lot of packaging going on, but those sort of initiatives have resulted in the spring, summer, fall having the best lodging business in 10 years. I mean, just drop dead, you know, really good stuff. So it's exciting to see that kind of momentum build at the resort. And that lodging business supports the other lines of business like food and beverage, golf, tennis, spa. So everything is doing well. So you ask me, how'd the spring, summer, fall go? Great. It's gone so great that I think I'm starting to forget about Christmas. Beyond that, I often get questioned, tell me about membership. Tell me, how's it going? Well, the membership model continues to grow. We budget to sell between 60 and 70 new memberships a year, and generally we're tracking right in that area. So, you know, Gunter Mueller and Cindy Cobb, they do a great job. In the office, I'm sure you meet Debbie Snyder and Diane Givens. They're working hard to deliver the kind of value that you all are looking for. So here's the breakout of membership. 1,365 unique households. But keep in mind that the extended family model we have with that, so you know, it can be the immediate branch on the tree. So when Cindy goes in to print total passes for members, counting children and immediate family, it's about 10,000. Now, 96% of those people are all resort members. And of that 96%, 88% of those total households have homes on the mountain, and 12 live in the valley. Now, we still sell a Stony Creek only membership, but as you can see, we're only selling about, of the total of that 365, only about 4% of those are Stony Creek now. And that's about how the sales are tracking as well. I'm also asked about what's Pacific's view of the membership. Well, it's exactly the same as Cindy's view of the membership and my view of the membership. We believe that the membership at Wintergreen is central to our business model. There's unwavering commitment to the membership. We also believe the exclusivity model that we're using is successful, and we intend to continue it, and there's no dilution of it planned. One of the things that initiative that Cindy came forward with is this member events calendar, where we have all sorts of things, whether it's cooking classes and wine tasting and wine tasting and wine tasting, right, Cindy? It's really kind of a neat thing, because what my observation, and I've poured a couple hundred bottles of wine in the last 9 months, members come in with a name tag on, and a glass of wine, and maybe there's some conversation about what vineyard and what they're drinking and what their thoughts are. But it's really about meeting their neighbors and fellow members and getting the social element to it. We're trying to develop, improve, I guess, the social fabric of the community with these events. And they're really successful. We have 150 people out to these events. And just if you're wondering, we generally we're pouring about a half a bottle of wine per person. So there's a lot of smiles when they leave. Now, I'm also pretty sure that the distribution of that wine is got a pretty high standard of deviation. So some people drink more than others, but they're fun events. And if you haven't participated in them, I would urge you to do so. Well, we heard about this guy, right? He's been my wingman. I've been here 8 years. I've never worked with anybody quite like this. He's, you talk about leadership and the need to have engaged leaders. This guy, Jay, defines engagement. And so very committed and works so hard. He's also a really smart guy. Prepared to go on and successfully without him, but I would be understating it greatly if I didn't tell you I'm going to miss this guy. I just have such a deep appreciation for him, and I know that I speak for all the associates. And if he hasn't snuck out of here, I'd like him to get a round of applause. With that, how am I doing, okay?
Well, we're about 15 minutes behind, but we have a couple of short questions. Go to the mic, please.
Is the ice skating rink going to be?
Yes.
Is the ice skating rink going to be open this year?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Joanne Lanigan. I'm just curious, from a business model, if there's any excess capacity to sell outside of your exclusivity. Well, I understand exclusivity for membership. Most other business models that have membership do make the excess capacity available for sale, and it seems to me like a lost opportunity for additional revenue for the resort not to make that capacity available.
As you might imagine, that's not the first time I've heard that question. And it's been something that's really been ongoing. I think back to the days when John Coy was the chairman at WPI, and we made the Aquatics and Fitness Center exclusive. It's a difficult position for some people to experience, and I mean to be respectful in that. But our purpose in expanding the Aquatics and Fitness Center is to accommodate the existing demand and accommodating in a way that it meets or exceeds our members' expectation.
But I'm referring to things like restaurants. I mean, it seems crazy to me that you should have empty seats at a restaurant when there's people willing to pay to eat there. I mean, I rent my place, and I get this comment all the time that they've been there, the place was empty, and yet they were not allowed to eat there. That makes no sense from a business perspective.
I appreciate your comment. Next question. Larry's question is about the hotel. You know, the hotels are big deals to build, and PGRI, Pacific Group Resorts, it continues to work on this, to work through the process, but they're attentive to the details, and at this point, we don't have anything further to announce other than it's progressing, but progressing in a real thoughtful, careful manner.
Thank you very much. The next presenter is represents the conscience of our organization, environmentally. Oh, he's hiding behind the Doug Coleman.
Everybody hear me? This working? I don't like to stand behind podiums. I'm sorry, I just don't. But anyway, it's wonderful to be here. Here we are again. Thank you for staying through the duration of this. I'll be short on, and we're running maybe a little behind time. And I sat there and I listened to Russell and Jay and all the people who spoke, and I've given up writing speeches because I sit and I listen, and the whole thing changes by the time I get to the podium because I'm listening to them, I'm playing off them, I'm listening to what they're saying, I'm saying, you know, okay, I need to talk about that, or I need to change. And sometimes I'm talking to people like you at the beginning of the meeting, and I just said, you know, well, I need to cover that. It's something I hadn't thought of. So I have all these blind spots that get covered and get exposed, and I have to respond to them. One of the things that I would like to talk about briefly, well, I can't tell you enough about Russell and Jay. The relationships go way back. There's a lot of camaraderie. Russell, you need to know other things about Russell briefly, and that is he was very instrumental in helping form the Nature Foundation in the late 80s, early 90s. I dare say if I hadn't had Russell's support on that, it may have turned out differently. I don't know. When you walk through the Trillium Field in springtime, when you have 20,000 trillium at your feet, Russell's the one that stepped up to the plate with me to help us preserve that area. So there's a major conservation piece that hasn't even been touched that goes back with Russell and me. We're the same age, we're born the same day. I have no plans of retiring anytime soon as long as I can find my shoes and look at a budget sheet and do botany and do science. The other question that came up that totally changed what I was going to say was the comment about property values and what's being done to enhance them and so forth and so on. I'll talk about the book in just a second, but Wintergreen is extremely unique. You can golf anywhere, you can ski anywhere, you can play tennis anywhere, but once you understand the history of Wintergreen, you will understand that what drew people here in the first place is the nature. It is head and shoulders above any other attribute that we have. I am fully convinced of that. I am fully convinced that the job that this Nature Foundation is doing to inform you of that and help you better understand that, I have to feel, without any bias, that we're the most important organization on this mountain in that respect. Thank you. If you take a look at the uniqueness of Wintergreen, very briefly, the mountain north of Wintergreen Drive narrows to one ridge wide. So all of the ancient ecosystems and unique areas we know are one ridge wide all the way up into Shenandoah National Park. That is the reason that we have Interstate 64. That was the reason we had the railroad crossing, the Blue Ridge Railroad and the tunnel. That's the reason we had the Rock Turnpike that the legislatures ran across. That's the reason that we have power lines running across, and it's also the reason Dominion wants to put a pipeline across. It's the path of least resistance. So what happens is the very reason we want to path of least resistance is also the reason why we should be very careful about it, because this ecosystem narrows there, and it's extremely important. So all of those pieces come into play, and I think we could do a better job today of promoting the nature of Wintergreen for this entire community. because it is clearly the most unique thing that we have. You as property owners, even though the resort has changed hands, you're still in control of the 11,000 acres between the Nature Foundation and your Property Owners Association. You own most of the land. You're still very much in control. Guard that with everything within you. All of us are not going to be here forever, but still make very sure that you understand that, and make sure that whoever replaces people along the way, do everything you can to ensure the preservation of the open space at Wintergreen, because that's what makes it unique. I won't talk too much about graphs and charts. Russell beat me to the punch on that. The most important thing about saying scientific names like the fungus associated with gypsy moth, Jay, are you listening? The most important thing about saying a scientific name is to say it with conviction. Doesn't matter how you pronounce it. Let me move through these slides. I see Ron looking at me, and we could not exist without the work of our volunteers. There's absolutely no way that 5 people can do the work that the Nature Foundation is doing. We're doing it with volunteers. We're doing it with researchers that are coming in. We're doing it with the help of outside people who are generous enough to work with us. These are our trail crew volunteers. We need to say thanks to all of them. We say thanks to the tennis people, the people who put together the auction, the people that serve on our board. The list goes on and on. If you're a volunteer for this organization, we're so grateful. We couldn't do it without you. This year, with the plant propagation volunteers, we successfully rooted over 1,200 shrubs. We keep about 1,000 shrubs on inventory now, so if you're interested in landscaping with natives, it's a good time to do it. We have lots of plants. The best example of the landscaping, the best example of how they work in the landscaping is at the Founder's Vision Overlook. So, course of the season, go by that overlook often, and you'll see a continuity of bloom that occurs there. And all of these are plants that we grew from cuttings or seeds. That particular group of volunteers is very, very active and very, very important to us. Here they are, and they don't just do plant propagation and growing plants from seed and that kind of thing. Here they are out in Nelson County last week, celebrating the finding of a new county record in a wetland. So this group is very active. They love the plants. They love the ecosystems. This would be a great group to join if you really want to get involved in some of the projects that are going on with it. Here again, we did a lot of training. We do a lot of training for our volunteers. Here we have well-known horticulturalist Cole Burrell leading a trip. A lot of our volunteers are in the audience there. I do a lot of work brainwashing volunteers and working with them. So it's a fun time, and it's a fun thing to be a volunteer of the Wintergreen Nature Foundation. Children are very important. There are 2 things that are extremely important here in addition to protecting the identity and the natural heritage of Wintergreen associated with its identity, and those are the research and the education programs. What happens is most of the time when you do research, it sits on a shelf and gathers dust until some other researcher wants to look at it. We're very actively trying to connect the scientist and the teacher and the child. And the programs that are happening in Nelson County schools, we're at capacity. We need volunteers to help us with those programs. If you're a retired teacher, please join us. Tremendous amount of work is being done with the school systems, and Albemarle County and Amherst County are also picking up on this. So I don't know, we're a little over our head in terms of capacity with this program, but it's going extremely, extremely well. I don't have any bear pictures to show you. This is a little more subtle. This has to do with research. And I believe it was a POA employee that discovered one of these little critters on the mountain. It's not rare. I don't think it can stop the pipeline, but very little is known about this little, known as a spotted skunk. And you're familiar with the striped skunk, and what's the big deal? There are not many people that study skunks for obvious reasons. But as soon as this happened, 2 researchers from Virginia Tech appeared on the scene. They're in their 2nd to 3rd year of studying this little critter because very little is known about it. It only inhabits these old forests, And it's much smaller than a regular skunk. They've been working, and most of the dens for this have been found, guess where? Crawford's Knob. So as we continue to manage that and see it attract research, we're doing a lot with it. Most of the skunks raise their tail. They're about to do damage to you. This one does a handstand. These are video cams taken on Crawford's Knob. Just real quickly, lest you think that predators don't get along, these are 3 gray foxes feeding on a deer that we put in there from the deer kills that the police department's doing. And you got a spotted skunk feeding right along with them. Here's another one with a bobcat, a raccoon, and this is a striped skunk to show you the difference. But we also have photographs from those video cams of bobcats, coyotes, and spotted skunks all dining at the same table. It's a very unique little animal. And research like this continually helps us better understand our ecosystems and the uniqueness of it. And it really makes a really strong scientific case for preservation. And in closing, I guess I would say that the most important accomplishment of the year is a 5-year process and bit of work with volunteers, George Nicholas, Gunnar Mueller, Peter Farley, and Don Faulkner and myself and many others that, and our, of course, our author, Mayor Buford Hitz, who had to be an angel to deal with all of us. But for the love of the land came to be. And thank you for your patience in helping us move this forward. This book tracks very carefully the early history of wintergreen. It is focused on the period that started in about 1969 up through the transition to justice. And I think by reading this, a couple of things happen. Number one, you get a better understanding of where we've been, what we've done. Wintergreen Pacific could get a lot from reading this book because it talks about a time that was a golden age of wintergreen and what the connection with nature was and how we received national awards and lots of different things. It's very, very important from that standpoint. It also does a couple of other things. I think that it makes you feel part of the community. Because once you read this, you say, okay, I'm home. This is part of what I understand that I'm part of, and I celebrate the fact that I'm the latest chapter in this. So I think that the most important piece to this is, understanding that we live in a very special place, and understanding how we get there, then you too are a part of this legacy. Thank you. I think it's still on. He may have cut it off.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Any questions for Doug? Have anybody seen the spotted skunk? No, I haven't either. Do not run over spotted skunks. That's not a good thing. I want to thank you all for sticking around. We have one more presenter. Patty and I consider performing arts to be one of the jewels in the crown of wintergreen. And there have been a lot of changes in performing arts over the last year with the music director, the executive director, and so we've invited Julianne Atkins is going to speak to us about wintergreen performing arts. Julianne, where are you?
Right behind you.
These people keep sneaking up behind me.
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm
you're ready. Go.
They've waited. They're ready to get this moving. So thank you for staying. I'm Julianne Akins, the new executive director of Wintergreen Performing Arts. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm excited to share with you some things that we've changed, some things that we've kept for next season, just a little bit behind the scenes. I'd like to start by asking how many of you have attended our festival at some point in the past. Just show of hands. Excellent. Well-informed audience. That's great. I don't think it hurts to provide a little clarity. Being new to this area, there's so many organizations that start with wintergreen and involve wintergreen in the title. We are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are connected to the resort and WPOA as partners. We certainly rely on their support and help, and couldn't do what we do without them. But a brief summarization of our mission. I've distilled this down just a little bit to give you a picture of what we do year-round. The festival is certainly what we produce with the greatest force, but I would say that year-round. We produce high-quality symphonic and chamber concerts in addition to music education and outreach programs to infuse the Blue Ridge Mountains and beyond with music year-round. We do this in a number of different ways with our Blue Ridge Mountain Music Fest, the Spirit of the Blue Ridge fundraising and social events that we have scheduled throughout the year this year. The Christmas concert coming up, December 11th. Tickets are on sale. And I believe I'll move on to introduce the theme of this next summer is the Fountain of Youth for the 2017 Winter Music Festival and Academy. The reason for this is that it is a very special year for us, the 20th anniversary of teaching the next generation of musicians. So what you know to be the Academy program. It's very unique, and I think as the counter to our part, I would introduce our Summer Music Festival in two ways. First, by talking about what I like to refer to as the big kids, the musicians and artists who travel from around the country to play with us in our professional orchestra and perform for you as soloists, comprise of the big kids, the festival. And the Academy, we have students who travel from around the world. They choose our festival over others to enhance their craft and to study in a space that's inspiring. So it's a unique thing that coming from the classical music world, the orchestral world that operates on the fall to spring schedule. This is a recharge point for not only the patrons, I think, in the summertime, but also for musicians who have the opportunity to play with folks they wouldn't normally get to. So it's a creative place for all of us. Dates penciled in, July 5th through August 6th. 4 weeks is the core. We've restructured a little bit of the format this year so that each week is building a little bit more momentum towards the weekend. We know that presenting 2-hour concerts every single night of the week can be a little bit draining, and we've taken your feedback from surveys to craft the schedule outline with a little bit more intention, so it can fit into your Tuesdays and Thursdays more seamlessly. Looking forward, Aaron and I got together, Aaron Freeman, our artistic director, got together when I started in May to sit down and ask, what is it that makes this so special, and how would I introduce this to somebody who's not familiar with this location, who's not familiar with Wintergreen Performing Arts or the festival? And I think I would start by introducing this concept of destination. This is what has drawn all of us here in the first place, the overwhelming natural beauty that Hank was referring to. That's why we're here, to start. I think this is a nice way to introduce folks to picture themselves here. The makings of a marketing campaign is what you're seeing here. And the community is what is truly unique about the Summer Music Festival in particular. I mentioned it's a recharge point for musicians and audience members alike. This is the Dunlop, of course, where we hold the majority of our performances right out here on the slopes. That will remain the same next summer. A unique community in the folks who are involved and also the neighbors, wonderful wineries, cideries that we're partnering with next year. And then once you've communicated that, I think what sets this over the top is the artistry. Musicians who come from around the country, students from around the world. We draw musicians from our professional orchestra from some of the top orchestras around the country, Cleveland, Atlanta, the National Symphony, and of course my friends at the Richmond Symphony too. So really a wonderful mix of folks who are excited to share their talents with you. That said, we like to provide different entry points, and since Erin has come on board, she's done a great job of, I think, putting some categories around the different kinds of music offerings that we have. These are from our Wild Wednesdays series, one of our most popular series, and I like to think of it as a great entry point for what we do. Last year know that the favorite Wild Wednesday performance was the Gershwin Rhapsody in Blue, the jazz night. We have more jazz planned for you next year, more dancing. We have some cabaret, Broadway-style themes planned for you. And we'll be bringing back Susan Greenbaum, who's a wonderful talent, and hope you'll enjoy that. The core of what we do is centered around these classic series concerts. Saturdays and Sundays we'll keep that format of a 6 p.m. Saturday concert and a Sunday matinee, with the exception of one day, and there's a very special reason. You'll see about that when we announce tickets in the spring. So Aaron has authorized me to share a few tidbits about what we have planned next summer. We will be bringing in 3 different guest conductors as well to lead the orchestra each week. So something different for you each time. Mark Russell Smith will be joining us for the finale week. He's the previous music director of the Richmond Symphony. Christopher O'Reilly, you might know from NPR's From the Top. He hosts the show. There's up-and-coming, very talented young musicians. He'll be working with our quartet in residence as well. We're excited to have him. We're partnering with the Sphinx organization. This is a group that helps bring to the front underserved students, musicians who are very talented, and we will be presenting the Sphinx Association winner. We don't know who that is yet, but they'll be joining us next summer to perform a concerto. Christopher O'Reilly, I'm told, will be performing a Mozart piano concerto, and we have Mozart's Requiem to open out the first classical weekend. So some great things planned there. Brahms, Shostakovich, Saint-Saëns will have some great big works for you to chew on. I know that the Tchaikovsky's Fourth was the favorite, hands down, concert from last year's festival. So we're trying to build on that, keep the big orchestras going. You know, my rule of thumb is if there's a tuba in the orchestra, I'm happy, and it's the right size. You know, so to talk a little bit more about the Academy. Last year we had over 65 different students. By my calculations, we have reached over 1,300 students to date since we've been, since this program is in existence. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to pass that on. You'll see these, you'll see us highlight and celebrate the Academy in a number of ways next year, including taking our music in unusual places, performances. You'll still see the Academy students at the Overlook and the Gristmill, at places in the Valley as well. We'll be planning a takeover day in Charlottesville. We'll, earlier in the festival, stage our Academy groups throughout Charlottesville to really generate some buzz, and it happens early enough that we hope folks will come and join us at the festival for the rest of the summer. We're composed of 5 programs, you may not know this, of the Academy, the largest being the String Intensive. It's a chamber string program. They're here all 4 weeks of the festival and study in different groups and work on their chamber repertoire to share with you. We also have a vocal intensive for 1 week, a composition intensive, and a conductor's summit. And then the last piece you can see is the Arts Administration Fellowship. They're here with us all 4 weeks, working and training alongside with us. We're bolstering this and really celebrating all that we've accomplished with the Academy next summer. Some different things that we've incorporated. Our morning seminars, you can attend Monday through Saturday, morning of the festival. We have something for the most advanced classical music aficionado. I'm a music major, and I still learn something from Michael White. I think he knows quite a bit, and he'll be joining us again. But we've also heard from you that you'd like to see more entry points and different kinds of seminars, which has led us to create a Music 101 series. So every Saturday morning before you hear the big works of the weekend, Aaron's going to lead a more accessible seminar on the basics of classical music and what you might listen for that evening. So hopefully that will address everything for everyone that you've asked for. Cooking classes will be back. We have some exciting plans there. Just to be clear, these are demonstration classes, and you see here Mark Gresge of the VMFA's Amuse restaurant in this picture, and we'll be presenting those again Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 4. And I'll close by saying that we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers. It's a common theme I've heard today, but I can't tell you how heavily we rely on our volunteers. And after being new, I see that this is truly a special organization grown out of the passion that the volunteers have channeled into what has now become Wintergreen Performing Arts. There's a number of different ways to help. Many of you already do, and thank you very much for that. I'm not even aware of many of you as volunteers, but I know that you're out there And we'd love to invite you to go to the website, click on the volunteer page and fill that out. What I'd like to do is make sure that you're aware of all of the different ways that we need help throughout the festival, including housing. We'll be starting that process before too long here, where we arrange for housing of our guest artists, professional artists, you, and you can host them for a week, a couple days, the duration of the festival, up to you. We couldn't do it without that. There are other ways to volunteer, to cook meals for our academy students, to help put on our social fundraisers for the Spirit of the Blue Ridge events year-round, in the office with data entry, things like that. So please feel free to learn more about that. Edith is right over there at our table and be happy to talk to you more about that too. I'll close by saying that we have a couple of upcoming events. A night in Verona, if you'd like to chat with us at the table. That's next Saturday, pending attendance numbers. And then, of course, our Blue Ridge Christmas concert. This is an annual favorite that's already on sale, selling quickly. It's December 11th, features the Virginia Consort at Rockfish Presbyterian Church. And then we have two other Spirit of the Blue Ridge events in the spring for you to take a look at. All of this information is on our website. And I'd also encourage you to, if you're not on our mailing list, if you sign up today, we will send you a discount and thank you when tickets do go on sale in the spring. So you can take a look at that, and Edith has all that information at the table. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here and to share this information with you. Thank you.